The Pentagon this afternoon released new rules aimed at reducing extremism within the military. Will those rules be helpful, or is it just another way to make life more difficult for service members who aren't sufficiently woke? We'll talk about that. In addition, as you heard in the headlines, a court has reinstated the vaccine mandate on employers with more than 100 employees. The Supreme Court has been asked to intervene and stop the mandate that forces private employers to impose a vaccine mandate on its employees. Will the Supreme Court step in? We'll talk about it with one of the lawyers involved in those cases. At the end of the program, will we always be told to wear masks on airplanes? Dr. Fauci suggests the answer may be yes. In addition, how worried should we be about the Omicron variant? We'll talk about that with Dr. Jay Bhattacharya at the end of the program. But first, the top story of the day is the torpedo that Senator Joe Manchin sent into the bow of President Joe Biden's top legislative priority, Build Back Better. On Fox News Sunday, he said that he cannot support the Democrats' massive social spending bill after months of negotiation.
If I can't go home and explain it to the people of West Virginia, I can't vote for it. And I cannot vote to continue with this piece of legislation. I just can't. I've tried everything humanly possible. I can't get there.
You're done. This is a no.
This is a no.
Not surprisingly, that announcement outraged his Democrat colleagues and the liberal media, who called him the Grinch and the lone senator who is, quote, obstructing the people's agenda and, quote, killing the future of American democracy. Now, Senator Manchin also said that White House staff have retaliated against him by putting out some things that are absolutely inexcusable. Things are not going well in the White House. But Senator Manchin is standing firm. What does this mean moving forward? Here now to talk about it and more is U.S. Representative Warren Davidson, a member of the House Financial Services Committee. He represents the 8th Congressional District in Ohio. Congressman Davidson, welcome back to the program.
Joseph, always an honor to be on, and congratulations on the slot here. Great to join you.
It's great to see you. Thanks for joining us. What was your reaction to Senator Manchin's statement that he is a no on Build Back Better?
Celebratory. Frankly, it's a near miss for America. And I'm thankful that Joe Manchin has stuck to his guns. And look, he's been honest all along. What's been dishonest is the Democrats' way to score this bill. It really is closer to a $5 trillion bill than a $1.7 trillion bill. And they used gimmicks. And Joe Manchin called out the gimmicks the same way Republicans have been calling them out. I hope that makes some people say, you know, maybe they were telling us the truth when they said the score is close to $5 trillion. Joe Manchin said it himself. Joe Manchin's been solid on budget and spending. Now, he might be for lots of things Republicans aren't, but he can see through the dishonesty in this bill, and I applaud him for sticking to it.
Were you surprised that Senator Manchin came out and gave a definitive no?
Yeah, somewhat, but it relieved, you know. I mean, it really, when you look at it, if he was truly opposed, if he truly meant, I mean, he had a great op-ed that was widely circulated in the Wall Street Journal talking about the importance of balancing our budgets, about the dishonesty of the scoring, and about the impact on inflation. I mean, this has been a debt bomb looming over our country. I look at it as he disarmed something dangerous rather than taking an offensive action. I mean, it was great. The scary thing is the way that this is being phrased as one person stops democracy. I mean, the reality is there's 50 other senators opposed to it. I just pray that all of the Republicans hold in their opposition to it.
And you make a good point there. There is what I would describe as real anger from the Democratic Party broadly about Senator Manchin's position on Build Back Better. Do you think there's a sense among party leadership in Washington, D.C., that they are entitled to the votes of people within their party? Therefore, they don't necessarily have to persuade them?
Yeah, I mean, I think that's, you know, look, when I ran for Congress, the Republicans were in the majority. And frankly, the role of the whip is essentially to get you to vote the way that they tell you to. No one in America, House or Senate, runs for office and says, when I get to Washington, I'm just going to follow orders so we can get things done. Thankfully, Joe Manchin isn't there to follow orders on this issue, at least. I mean, Donald Trump won West Virginia by like 39 points. When he say listen to the people, I think he is listening to the people of West Virginia.
I think a lot of America would agree with you that the bigger threat to democracy would be the idea that our elected representatives would go to Washington, D.C. and simply follow orders rather than thinking for themselves. And in Senator Manchin's case, I think legitimately representing the will of the state that has elected him. Now, Senator Schumer, Majority Leader Chuck Schumer, said today that he still intended to have a vote on Build Back Better. He thinks there needs to be an up and down. Do you have a sense that the Democrats in the Senate believe that the American public is clamoring for this in such a way that a no vote on Build Back Better would ultimately lead to the public punishing them at the polls?
Yeah, I don't think it's going to be a smart move, but I'll leave it to Senator Schumer to run his party. They've been running it into the ground. I mean, you've had almost a full year of this administration with, Democrat control of the House and Senate, and the country would have been better off if they simply didn't do anything. Their policies have been catastrophic. And look, I applaud any effort to get more votes. We ought to break the bill into little chunks, one-page bills, one topic at a time. Have them debated in committee, subject to amendment, and let there be votes. That would be a more honest, representative legislature, but that's not been the path. Frankly, even Ways and Means in the House didn't have the hearing on all the tax hikes in this. It was driven by House and Senate leadership. It wasn't even deliberated in committee.
It may be now that the White House has no other option but to do this piece by piece. But I think there is concern within the Democratic caucus that the more progressive wing of the Democratic Party would not find that acceptable. You mentioned that this comes at the tail end of a difficult year for President Biden. Afghanistan did not go well. Inflation is not going well. The border is not going well. Depending on who you listen to, the coronavirus situation is as bad as it has ever been. Where does President Biden go from here? He's doubling down on all of the same policies. It's a kind of a human nature. I mean, when I was in the Army, there were these obstacle courses, and you would put junior leaders through the courses and have them manage a task. And often, once they committed to something, even though it was obvious, for example, that the ladder wasn't going to reach across the pool of water, they would double down and stretch it, even knowing it wasn't going to do it. And that seems to be, we know that the vaccines are not stopping the spread, but people are doubling down on it. We know that massive lockdowns aren't working. New York, if it was, New York would already have no spread and Florida would be running rampant. But people double down on all the same policies that didn't work in the first place. Hopefully we can fight human nature and follow the logic and the science on all the problems and look at the math on spending. I mean, you can't just use negative numbers. Eventually you have to pay for some of this. And I just don't think people are giving enough thought to how much of this generation's consumption is supposed to be paid for by the next generation. I applaud the Republicans for holding strong on this Build Back Better initiative. And I'm thankful that Joe Manchin and hopefully Kristen Sinema and others will join the effort to stop spending more than we can afford. We're speaking with Congressman Warren Davidson. And Congressman, one thing that Washington, D.C. seems to agree on is that we have a lot of challenges. Do you think there are any solutions right now that can bring the parties together?
I think truly one of the most bipartisan things in Congress is taking care of our veterans. You look back just a few years ago, maybe 2014, I remember the VA was in distress. Veterans have still continued to commit suicide at alarming rates. The lockdowns have been bad for mental health for all populations. And I see a consensus emerging in terms of taking care of our veterans. I hope we'll give the same thought to all of our policies on mental health for the public. It used to be that the United States government was pretty united behind Israel. That no longer seems to be the case, but it sure would be nice, especially in this Christmas season.
You mentioned our veterans. You and a group of your colleagues filed an amicus brief backing 35 Navy service members who are suing the Pentagon to prevent them from enforcing the vaccine mandate and claiming religious exemptions, saying that the mandate violates their religious freedom. What motivated you to do that?
Well, I don't support any of President Biden's 5 mandates. He's got one for OSHA, one for CMS, the medical payment system, one for federal employees, one for the military, and one for Department of Defense contractors. I oppose all of them because the risk of COVID-19, particularly to military age men and women, young, fit, healthy people, is very low. There are whistleblowers that are pointing out that the risk of the side effects is greater than the risk of the virus for that particular population. But the problem, one of the biggest problems with these mandates that Joe Biden's pushing, there aren't religious exemptions, and there aren't sound science treatment for natural immunity. So this is a lawsuit focused on the religious freedom aspects, and I hope it prevails. I feel pretty confident it will, and that was the point of the amicus brief that I joined.
There are some who say that this really isn't a religious issue, that these are really just personal objections being masked as religious objections. What's your response to that?
I think the U.S. Conference of Catholic Bishops, for example, is pretty clear that they are conscious objections. You can't allow the state to tell you what you can inject into your body or whatever, the state to compel you to have a medical procedure. And look, the military used to submit a lot of rights. I don't believe that the military should be barred from mandating vaccines. I was an Army Ranger. I took all kinds of vaccines against all sorts of things. But this particular vaccine is not well thought out. And normally there are exemptions for religious cause and for natural immunity.
Now, very quickly, we've got about a minute left. Tens of thousands of service members have not yet met the requirements of the vaccine mandate. What is happening to them?
Well, unfortunately, they're incrementally being discharged. The administration is harming our national security by doing that. Congress tried to stop it in the Defense Authorization Act. Unfortunately, we could only make sure that they can't be dishonorably discharged. They shouldn't be discharged at all. But unless the Biden administration relents, the commander-in-chief does have a lot of discretion over the active duty military. Really is poorly thought out, and then the government's only funded until February. So we're calling on all of our Republican colleagues and as many Democrats as will boldly cross the line to say, yes, we want to fund the government. We do not want to fund a government that imposes these mandates on our population, particularly our military men and women.
There are a lot of challenges ahead of us between now and February. And Senator Davidson, we appreciate your time, and Ohio is beautiful this evening. Thanks so much for being with us.
Thank you.